Hello, Pace 111 class. It's Steve. I hope that you're doing really well. So, being that your week number 4 assignment that is due tonight, Tuesday, June 15th, your 4-week study plan or time management plan, I wanted to do just a short video on self-management, what I call self-management, because it's not really about managing our time, it's about managing ourselves. And this ties in nicely as well to your week number 5 project, your team project, which is focusing on managing distractions. So it's important to think about what are your biggest distractions. I've listed 3 categories here: electronic devices, family and friends, and binge watching. We have so much information access right at our fingertips that although that is wonderful and great, it can really be a distraction having easy access to so many things, to so many sources of information. You see at the bottom there the academic obligations. I've listed some of the more common academic obligations of college students: reading chapters, exam prep, research, writing a research paper, discussion forums, announcements that your instructors are posting, viewing or listening to the lectures for your courses. So there's a lot that's being asked of you as a college student. And along with that, there are also a diverse range of distractions. And so hopefully as you're working with your team, you're thinking about the distractions that each of you and your team manages in their life or experiences in their life, and then thinking about some plans and strategies to effectively manage those. And speaking of plans, so I listed here a couple things when we think about the self-management mindset. We're thinking about planning ahead. You see there at the top, planning ahead. What does planning ahead do? It helps us. It gives us room for error. It gives us room for mistakes. It gives us room if life happens, an unanticipated life event happens. It gives us room to breathe. Understanding and being aware of the small pieces and components of an assignment. So some of you actually mentioned this in one of our discussion forums thus far in the course, where you like to read over the assignment several times and figure out kind of all the nuts and bolts. I think that is a really great practice. And that is a really great practice for self-management. Understanding how all of the small pieces or components kind of fit together for an assignment, and celebrating those small victories as you complete each of those small components. Are you able to distinguish between behaviors that are important and urgent and those that are not? In a second, we'll talk briefly about those. Obviously, prioritization involves being able to recognize what is important and urgent. What do you have to get done right away? And why is it important? Well, an assignment for class, obviously, one reason that is important is you're earning a grade for that assignment. So there's some value tied in to that assignment. And finally, they're learning when to say no to distractors that impede your academic goals and obligations. So I'm not sitting here telling you to say no to your children, say no to your spouse, say no to your partner, whatever. But there are times when we have to put the boundaries up, or we have to be disciplined enough to actually say no to someone in our lives who might not understand that, hey, I've got this 10-page paper due tomorrow that's really important that I get done. I don't have time to chat with you for hours on the phone this evening. And then some of the themes in self-management. So we already talked about some of these, like procrastination. Obviously, that's putting things off that we should have done yesterday. All of us have been guilty of that, but that's something we want to work on when we are looking to transform ourselves into effective self-managers. Prioritization, we talked about that already as well. That's the ability to recognize that importance and urgency. What has to happen immediately? What's something that can maybe be put on the back burner and not addressed maybe till tomorrow or the day after. Building in accountability for yourself, making sure that you are holding yourself accountable for the processes and outcomes of your education, meaning when you actually put your nose to the grindstone and you're spending an hour or two working on a course, that's accountability, that's discipline. Valuing learning moments, so really finding pleasure in the learning aspects of your courses. So performance is really important, obviously, but learning is also just as much important. We want to make sure that we're not losing sight of that learning aspect, because that learning aspect can really fuel how effectively you do manage yourself. I provided here just a couple examples of the kind of what I call a self-management chart of looking at importance, 2 dimensions, importance and urgency, and what are some examples of behaviors that match these different combinations of dimensions. So you see here, obviously, if you have a paper due tomorrow for your English course, that's going to be something that's both important and urgent. But let's say you have a final exam that's a month away. That's going to be important, and I spelled important wrong there. Sorry about that. But maybe not so urgent because it's 4 weeks away. You don't want to wait too long to start putting that study guide together, but it's not, obviously it's not absolutely urgent that you do it today, right at this moment. And then not important and not urgent is probably the biggest time waster is watching YouTube videos. I think YouTube is a wonderful system. This is a YouTube video you're watching right now, if you're watching it. And yeah, there are some really valuable content on there, but sometimes we spend entirely too much time on YouTube, or binge watching as one of the distractors or time wasters, well, that was mentioned earlier. Something to think about, just an example of how you apply this. So how an effective self-manager addresses a large project is kind of the questions that you see here. We're giving you a 10-page paper to write for your Psych 100 class, and you have to do a 15-minute presentation on it. It's due a month from today. You might say, well, yeah, you just said that's important but not urgent. Yeah, you can start working on it, though, so that you are not procrastinating, you're planning ahead, you're prioritizing, and you are going to be less stressed and frustrated because of it. So you see the questions that we listed here. First, gaining understanding of what the end product is supposed to look like. Oftentimes, instructors may provide you with samples of projects and such, or sometimes you may even be able to use a sample test from before if the instructor provides that. What are all the pieces of the project? What are similar tasks that you can complete together? Kind of creating an outline of step by step what you have to do to complete the whole project. Thinking logically, putting those steps then in an order. How much time you anticipate spending on each of the pieces of the project. What's the timeline for completing each piece of the project? So that's the accountability, putting some time sensitivity with deadlines. And then finally there you see how are you going to hold yourself accountable for completing each task by the desired timeline. So no, this was long-winded. I noticed a lot of people aren't even watching the announcements. So those of you that have stuck with me through this, I really do appreciate it. I hope the information I'm sharing with you is helpful. Perhaps some of this information might also help you as you are moving forward with your Managing Distractions team project for week number 5. So thank you so much. Have a great morning, day, afternoon, or evening.